Hello everyone. Feel free to keep getting food. I'm just going to do some housekeeping and general intros, and then we'll get this event started. I just want to thank everyone for coming to our event tonight where there's a will and a state plan, there's a way. I am Melissa Cornwell. I am Marketing Associate at Westbury, and Andy Clausen and Darlene Means are also with me tonight. If you have any questions at the end of the event, we will be at the marketing and registration booth in the front where you checked in. I'd like to thank Bart, Corey, and Joe for the wonderful food they put together tonight. And please feel free to get drinking beverage throughout the event if you need. We have bathrooms by the registration table, and then we do have a marketing survey on your chairs at the end of the event. If you could please fill those out and turn them in at the registration table. Marketing will review those, and you can also put future event suggestions or topics, and we'll take those into consideration in our planning throughout this next year. So I will introduce now Brian Cagle and Jeff Youngs, who will be speaking tonight. Brian Cagle is an attorney at the local law firm Pepicelli, Youngs & Youngs, where he focuses in the areas of elder law, estate planning, estate probate, administration and settlement, real estate, Social Security disability appeals, business formations, mergers and sales, and car crashes. Prior to joining Pepicelli, Youngs & Youngs, Brian was an assistant director attorney in York County, Pennsylvania for 2 years. He is a member of the board of directors for Common Roots, a volunteer legislative coordinator for the Crawford County chapter of Fair Districts in Pennsylvania, and a former president of the board of directors for the Meadville Community Theater. And then we have Jeff Youngs, if you can get us away. He grew up in his family's law practice, working as a secretary and later a law clerk prior to practicing law with the firm. He joined Pepicelli, Youngs & Youngs as a third-generation attorney. He focuses his career on car crashes, wills and powers of attorney, elder law, estate planning, estate probate, administration and settlement, real estate, Social Security disability appeals, and guardianships. Jeff is also the attorney for the Crawford County Register and Recorder's Office. He is the president of the Meadville AM Rotary Club, has been involved with the Meadville Neighborhood Center, and is currently on the board of the Crawford County Historical Society, and he looks forward to continued civic involvement. So I'll hand this off to Jeff and Brian and their presentation.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you certainly to the folks here at Westbury who are taking time out of their day to make this more than just a place to come sit. Beautiful environment, beautiful venue, they even have good food out, and that's why not come to eat if nothing else. So, again, I'm Jeff Youngs. Certainly appreciate you coming out here. Brian and I have put together a presentation for you. Our goal is not to sell you stuff. That's not why we're here. Why we are here is to help prevent, or at least reduce some of the things that make our job miserable, and that is having to tell somebody, had you done this a little differently, or had you known this would have turned out the way you want to now, or it would have really been beneficial to know some of the things. So if you remember nothing else, just take home the pamphlet with you, read it when the weather is overcast and rainy like every day for the next 3 months it's going to be, and hopefully get you thinking about some of these things, to say, well, I guess now's the time to figure out what I want to do, and then say, who am I going to go see to get this done, and to kind of get you thinking in the right direction here about preparing for your future. So what happier topic to deal with than death and dying? This is probably what it comes down to. So, kind of roadmap here, where we're headed today is largely 5 different directions. We're talking about a will, we're talking about 2 different kinds of powers of attorney, and most of you are probably familiar with that concept, but it doesn't stop there, and that's one of the things where we have these conversations. We're trying to educate you folks now to prevent folks just stop at a will and 2 powers of attorney. It goes a little further than that, and we'll talk about each one in turn. beneficiary designations are still the biggest mistake we see in estate planning, simply because beneficiary stuff like your IRAs, 401ks, life insurance, that's often the largest largest asset or combination of assets in anybody's estate plan. You work how many decades to save up? Beneficiary stuff matters, and we'll tell you why. And then finally, just some common questions we get. Can I add a kid to my house deed? Can I put a kid on the bank account? Joint asset ownership. That's something else to discuss too. We also will talk about here Medicaid planning and the concept there. How does that work if you have a family history of needing long-term nursing home care? There's some common misconceptions out there, and again, one of our hot topics for tonight. We don't want to see that kind of, had you done this differently or had you known this in terms of nursing home planning and Medicaid. We'll talk about that. So as we go through this, we're here to do kind of a Q&A format, but we certainly welcome questions from you. It's not all about us. It's here for what do you want to know? That's your time to ask us as we go along. We'll talk about all kinds of stuff. So if you've got a question here, we're obviously starting with a will. Just
Raise your hand. Interrupt us. I just interrupted Jeff. It's okay.
So, to get us started, Brian, this thing says a will up here. What is that?
It's a dead giveaway. No. A will is a document that says what happens to your stuff when you die. It sets who the executor is, so that's the person that's going to take care of your assets. It talks about who's going to be guardian of your children if you have minor children. It can create a trust if you have a disabled heir, someone who, if they got a whole big pile of money, they're going to be kicked off of receiving Social Security benefits or something like that. So the wills can actually, it's like the foundation of your estate plan. It's probably the single most important document after someone dies. And if you don't have one, your heirs are going to have some trouble. It can make things a lot easier for them. It can solve a lot of arguments. It can, I'll just leave it in that. We'll get into some more of that later. Why do you need one? Again, avoid the cost, avoid the hassle, provide certainty, says what you want, what should happen. Jeff mentioned the retirement assets. That's the one thing a will does not do. It is not going to affect any asset that has a beneficiary designated on it. So if there's a beneficiary on an asset and that beneficiary is alive, that's how it's going to go. It doesn't matter what your will says. So that's why when Jeff said we see mistakes and problems with beneficiary designated assets, if somebody comes in and says, boy, I want to take so-and-so out of my will, I don't like this kid of mine anymore, but they forget to change their IRA beneficiaries, or they had a bank account that had a beneficiary, that beneficiary is still going to get all that money.
Yeah, so the misconception we see is, at least when we do these, we send out a questionnaire, which is a bit of a task, but it really streamlines because it targets exactly what we need. And it's, what do you have in your bank account? Asks about all your assets, all your retirement stuff, life insurance, stocks, bonds, you name it. And then has questions at the end we talk about, how do you want this stuff to go? And people think of that as their whole estate, and they're right, but it doesn't mean it all just gets funneled through your will. So that's the beneficiary stuff we talk about. The IRA should not be included in your will if you've done things right, because it's going to pass directly to beneficiary. This goes for 401ks, life insurance, transfer on death, or payable on death accounts as well. Those pass directly to the beneficiary, and we can talk about that. Questions?
Does that include life annuities?
It can, yeah. Yes. The question was, does that include annuities? The answer usually it does, yes. Depends on the annuity plan.
And once you designate in your will, the beneficiary.
Yes, the people you put in your will can also be the beneficiaries. So yes, it is allowed.
You got 10.
some folks said, I don't have anything, I'm just too poor for a will. And some of the things we pointed out, hopefully that's come a little clearer to you, that a will is a lot more than just say who gets your stuff. You've got that certainty there, to use the word. Who's getting your stuff? I'm not sure if you mentioned it. If there are minor children, not grandkids, but minor children, you can name a guardian for them in the will as well. So again, that just says what you want to happen, because when the time comes, you ain't going to be around to tell us what you want. Get the will done and get things in order. While I'm thinking about it, common question we get, see if Brian knows the answer. I'm an executor. What's an executor do?
I have no idea. The executor is kind of like the CEO of a corporation. So they're in charge of everything. The executor's job is to manage the assets, manage the corporation. In the case of a business, the CEO is managing it for the benefit of the shareholders. For an estate, the executor is managing it for the benefit of the beneficiaries who are going to receive those assets. They also have duties to creditors, because creditors have to be paid before beneficiaries, of course. Just like you don't get to take your pay home and just sit there and have fun with it until you paid all your bills. So that's the main thing, the main responsibility of the executor. But they also have to do things like, in Pennsylvania, we have inheritance tax. So they're responsible for filing an inheritance tax return. They may have to do a final account, which is where the court gets to take a look at what the executor did. Did you handle these assets appropriately? And as long as you did what you were supposed to do, didn't act unreasonably, weren't giving out hundreds to everybody out of the estate assets and paying your own bills with the estate assets, the court's probably going to say, yeah, you did just fine. So those are the primary issues you have, the responsibilities you have when you're an executor.
A lot of stuff Brian has mentioned here is where the lawyers come in, because that's our job behind the scenes, is to make sure the legal stuff gets done. But there's so much that happens outside of our office that the executor has to do. So if you have a house, you're meeting with a realtor, you're signing a listing contract, you might be doing showings on your own, you might be, I've had a lot of folks cleaning out the house by themselves or getting family, setting up U-Hauls or trips to Lincoln Recycling to help get rid of some of the stuff Mom and Dad never got rid of and couldn't have 50 years ago. We see a lot of that stuff. They're the ones signing checks to pay every single bill that comes through the estate here.
That sounds like a lot of work. So, do you get anything for doing all this work?
Yeah, you do. The lawyer gets paid too, which is nice. But the executor typically gets paid 5% of the total estate amount. So that certainly varies in each case. That is subject to Pennsylvania income tax. We always make folks aware of that. And it's an optional thing. I've had a lot of families say, well, that's a lot of work. I've got 3 other siblings. They live in Arizona. They're not going to help me for 5 seconds. Yeah, you feel like you deserve to get a little compensation there. But also, I've had cases the family's close, or they just say, well, I'm the only child. Why shoot myself in the foot and pay income tax on this fee? I don't really care about it. So it's optional, but certainly the executor can get paid typically 5%. What's going on?
Is there any problem with having two?
Good question. Question was, any problem with having 2 executors? That's something we talk about with folks when they're going through the will. Who do you want for executor? And I add, tongue-in-cheek as it is, do you want 2 or 3 cooks in the kitchen? Sometimes it works. Sometimes, the bottom line there, people have to agree on absolutely everything, and they have to sign absolutely everything. You can do a lot by mail and email these days, of course, but there have been some times where we say, gee, had we known, it would have been nice to just say, how about 1 cook? Let them fix the feast.
And ultimately, it's up to you. It's your will.
Right.
You get to decide, and you know your families better than we do as the attorneys, so you'll know whether these kids or whoever your executor is going to be, you'll know whether they're going to get along if you want to pick 2. We don't know that. What we see oftentimes when somebody has picked 2 is that they're not agreeing. So you end up with 2 executors, and one says, boy, the realtor says we should sell the house for $50,000. The other one says, no way, that's a horrible price. I'm holding out for $100. have to stay out of that issue completely, they would have to get two separate attorneys to fight it out. If we're only representing one of the executors, then we have to go to court, and the estate is paying for all this. Then we have to go to court and say, hey judge, tell the executors what they should do. So it can work. If you think there might be disagreement though, you ought to pick just one.
You said the executor pays the inheritance tax?
The executor out of the estate assets, yes.
What is the inheritance tax?
Yeah.
How, what percent of that?
So inheritance tax, so the question was about the executor paying the inheritance tax and how much the inheritance tax is. It depends on your relationship to the person that died. So each beneficiary, if you're a lineal descendant, so your children, grandchildren, or ancestors, so parents, are taxed at 4.5% of the value of whatever asset they get. If it's a spouse, the inheritance tax rate is 0. So you still have to file the return, but then you get to multiply the number by 0 at the end, which we all know equals 0. But you still have to go through the hassle of the return. If you're siblings, you're getting brother or sister, niece and nephew, it's 12%. And if you're talking about complete strangers or somebody who's a even more distant relation, your second cousins, stepbrothers, third wife, you're taxed at 15%. That beneficiary would have to pay 4.5% for a son and daughter.
So I've had some discussions with folks, as a significant other, they come in, we've been living together for 25 years, and we go through all this, and I said, okay, you can pay $50,000 to Uncle Sam in tax, or you can get married down the street. Sometimes they've taken it up. That's to your judgment, it's personal, but 0% to spouses, it's kind of cool and works that way.
Karen, you had a question?
Well, and I would just, as far as having two executors, it seems like the only way you really want to do that is if you choose a second one in case the first one
Yeah,
passes before you do.
And you would always do that in
You
your will.
can choose a
You would
second.
always have an alternate in
Yeah.
there. Or you could have multiple alternates. You say, if not Bob, then Billy, and if not Billy, then Susie. And
Not equal at the same time. I think
no,
that's-
not at the same time, but if one's serving as executor, great. If we have that situation where the executor has died before or
Maybe all of a sudden
during,
declines to do it or something.
or yeah, the executor can decline to do it. Your executor does not have to serve.
The executor can be a bank, correct?
It can be a bank. You want to check with the bank first to make sure they're going to be willing to do it. Sometimes you name a bank, and if they don't know about it and don't really want to, they'll just decline and they'll go to the next anyway. But so check with the bank first before you name the bank as executor.
If you decide to have an attorney be your executor, what percentage people you
Generally we don't do that.
attorneys don't be executors?
Not typically. That's a whole extra level of hassle for the attorney that we don't get paid any extra for. So we not only have to do our job as attorney, but we also have to do all that stuff that Jeff was talking about, running around, meeting with realtors, signing contracts, doing all that kind of stuff. And we can only get that 1.5% fee for doing it. We can't charge our attorney fees on top of it.
If you make a beneficiary
Okay, so that's a good question. Robert asked if there's inheritance tax on an asset where you've named a beneficiary. Yes, the only time you don't have inheritance tax is on an asset that has a beneficiary is life insurance. Life insurance has no inheritance tax.
Right now.
Right now. We can't speak to what the law is going to be in 50 years, or 5 years even. But right now, there's no inheritance tax.
Where did you keep the original copy of the will?
Yeah, we get that a lot. It's one of the things we do cover, just to make a note for our file. First off, the original is what matters when the time comes and we have to open up an estate. Probating a copy of your will is quite difficult. I've done it a couple times, but the whole question there is, you don't have the original, did mom just tear it up or burn it up or do something? Anybody could photocopy that thing in the time since she signed it until she passed. So keeping it, we leave it up to the client. We don't usually hold on to wills because we'd have to have every bank box at PNC taken. To do that over a 40-year career, just not practical. So it could be a safe deposit box at your own bank. Could be, a lot of folks have some kind of safe or fireproof box at home, keep things there. I've had plenty of cases where it's kept in the sock drawer. Somewhere where you know where it is, it's likely to be safe, you're not shuffling through it all the time.
But isn't it true it's in a safe deposit box, they can't get it?
Not entirely, no.
No.
Banks will let you in because the safe deposit box has to be dealt with appropriately for the estate process, and they know that the will starts the estate ball rolling, so you have to get into the question though, they will let you in for that.
And only for that,
Right.
right at the beginning. So they will just check to see if there's a will in there. If there is, they'll pull that out.
So, moving on, we've talked about a will that obviously says who gets your stuff when you kick the bucket. And that starts when you die and your estate is open. So the question is now, let's rewind the clock. While I'm still alive, what are some of the things I can do to prepare for my future? One of them is a financial power of attorney. So talk to me, what is that? Financial, sounds like money.
Yes, it does. It is about money. It's also about everything else that you own, all your stuff, your car, your house. It names a person to act on your behalf. So for my power of attorney, I have my wife named as my agent. So if something were to happen to me, like I get hit by a bus and I'm in the hospital and I'm in a coma and I can't pay my bills, my wife can go and pay my bills for me. She probably would anyway, but
My wife would, so.
There are bills that are in my name alone, like my student loans. She can go and take money out of the account to pay for it. Even if it was both my wife and I that were, hit by this bus and in a coma and unable to do anything for ourselves, my parents are second on my power of attorney, and they could go to the bank with the power of attorney and say, all right, put me on this account as agent, not as an owner of the account, but as agent, and then they'd be able to write checks to pay my mortgage out of my money rather than out of their money. They wouldn't want to pay it out of their money. So that's what the financial power of attorney does. It's very helpful in a couple situations. One, if somebody becomes incompetent, they're no longer able to handle their own affairs. Without a power of attorney, typically you need to get a guardianship. And that's a court process, and that's really expensive. You got to get a doctor involved, you got to get a testimony from the doctor in the court, you've got lawyers involved. You could be looking at $4,000 or $5,000 for what, power of attorney we can help you create as part of this process. Might cost you an extra $100 or $150 up front as part of the whole process. So that's the financial power of attorney. It's also a good planning tool. We'll talk about Medicaid planning a little bit later, but it's a good planning tool for that, because if you're not able to handle your affairs because you're incompetent or you were injured and need to end up in skilled nursing care or some kind of rehabilitation care, that person who has the power of attorney can take steps that we can talk about a little bit later to make sure that all of your assets don't end up going to the nursing home, but instead that Medicaid comes in and starts paying the nursing home's bills. So that's why financial power of attorney is really important.
And it comes down to trust, not the legal document trust, but trusting the person that you name, because the financial document is effective immediately, as soon as you sign it. So many folks think, well, I've got to be in the hospital on life support first. That used to be the case before I was born, but not anymore. So as soon as that's signed, whoever you named, without your knowledge even, could clean out your bank account and go off to Europe, and there goes your stuff.
So Jack, you have the power of attorney, why do you need a will?
Power of attorney, why do you need the will? Because powers of attorney expire at death. Is that a great answer? So there was a hand up in the back. Yes?
Isn't there such a thing, excuse me, there's a durable power of attorney?
Yes, durable in the legal sense. It used to be a question, you're in your right mind and know what you're doing right now, so you sign this document. Durable means it will continue on even if you are later not capable of managing your own affairs. And that's the big importance, like Ryan said. But one of the things we always point out with the financial POA is that it's effective immediately, even while you're still able to do all your stuff. So you want to catch the Steelers game, that's fine. Send somebody else to the bank and pay your bills.
All we're talking about here are durable powers of attorney, because it wouldn't make sense to do one that wasn't durable.
So switching gears here, we talked about assets and money and everything. The one thing that the financial power does not cover is healthcare. That's this other document here. So it's like the other one, names somebody to manage your stuff, but the stuff this time is your health and your medical care and making medical decisions for you. The big difference here, so it gets around HIPAA laws, just for some background. The privacy stuff, doctors and hospitals can't talk to anybody about your medical care without a healthcare power of attorney or guardianship, which this gets around just like the other one. Some people have said, well, hey, my husband was just in the medical center for 3 months and I had no problem getting stuff done for him. That's common. Legal medical center is, right now, is okay. We don't see many issues with them, but you send somebody up to St. Vincent or Hammond or over to Cleveland Clinic, they seem to be a little pickier for whatever reason. So that's what...
Federal law, that's the reason.
Yeah. So the takeaway here, you've got one for money and assets. You get one to cover all your bases for healthcare and medical decisions. So you don't have to go through that guardianship process, which costs thousands and can take months to do, and have a judge name who you want to activate. Why go through all that headache? Name somebody now that you trust to make those decisions. So, we've also talked about wills, powers of attorney, and then the beneficiary stuff was one of the biggest mistakes that we've said. So, why shouldn't I just leave my IRA and stuff to my estate?
The IRAs in particular are especially important to have beneficiaries designated. There are great federal tax benefits for having those go directly to a beneficiary, because the beneficiary gets to take required minimum distributions over the beneficiary's life expectancy, rather than all in one lump sum like it's going to happen when you leave it to your estate. So their income tax is going to be huge right away if that money is all left in the estate. Now, there are other reasons on all of these assets, because in the process of probating the estate, that's going to take a long time. Typically, it takes a little over a year, because creditors have a year to come forward from the last date that we advertise an estate. So an estate gets advertised when it's open. It gets advertised three times in consecutive weeks. And you have to wait a year from that last advertising before the creditors would be told, sorry, it's too bad you came forward too late. That's why we tell executors, one of their responsibilities, to make sure creditors are paid. We tell them, look, you probably shouldn't distribute assets within that 1 year period. Well, if you have beneficiaries that you want to actually have receive this money relatively quickly, name them. Name them on the asset. Keeps it outside of the estate. Also, if it's in the estate, your creditors can get at it. You know, it's that 1 year period, creditors can come forward. Let's say you have an IRA and it's worth $400,000. And your estate has, I don't know, $20,000 in it. But you had some creditors out there, you racked up the credit card bills because you really like to go shopping, or Amazon became your new great friend online. They can go after your estate for all the assets that are in the estate. that money that goes to the beneficiary, they can't touch. Now, there's also estate recovery that we can talk about a little later, but that's if you receive Medicaid. There's also a really important reason to have beneficiaries designated on the assets. Some bank accounts you can have beneficiaries designated on there. There's a difference between an asset that has a transfer on debt or pay on debt versus an asset you make joint with someone else. There can be trouble if you make the asset joint rather than transfer on debt. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Beneficiary designations, if you do them right, and you talk to your attorney before you do them to make sure it's consistent with the rest of the estate plan that we've already talked about, especially the will. But if you do them, they can be extremely beneficial to anybody that you've named as a beneficiary.
So, one of the common questions we get, should I put my kid on my house deed? So let's dive into that now. How that works, if you do add somebody's name, then you've got multiple cooks in the kitchen, to go back around to that phrase. So if you die first, your kid survives, then the house with full ownership is passed to that child. So